right. So we're here this afternoon with Amy Sutton, the CEO of Crossroads4Hope. And sometimes I interview entrepreneurs, sometimes I interview cancer survivors and experts in the wellness field. And every once in a while, I get to talk to someone who runs a like-minded organization, to the Lynne Cohen Foundation. And Crossroads4Hope is very complementary to what we do at the Lynne Cohen Foundation. This is the first time we're meeting. So in addition to asking you questions, I'm just excited to talk to you and learn more about the organization straight from you, because I feel like I could read all I want on your website and deep dive, but hearing from you kind of is the best way to understand what it is exactly you do, your mission with Crossroads4Hope, and why it was started, and just sort of the history, the background, and what you all are doing today. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Let's dive in. So just,
Sure.
give me this sort of overview.
Well, our organization was started by 4 women in the community, all of whom had had professional and personal connections to cancer. And they believed very strongly that individuals and families needed access to supportive services that helped them live every day in the face of a cancer diagnosis of either themselves or a loved one. So, this organization has been on a journey since 2001. And I always tell people that our founders had the harder job because they had to convince people to join them in the community just based on their passion and commitment to this issue. They had nothing to point to in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I came in 2012 and was asked to really help take the organization to the next level. And we had really kind of changed our approach. Rather than be an organization you had to come to, we started thinking about what does it really mean to ensure that nobody faces cancer alone? What communities are the ones that are really facing a deficit with respect to access to these types of programs and services, which are fundamental to every cancer journey? So what we do is, we are here because no one's prepared to face cancer. And we provide the support, information, and resources and professionals that are fundamental to every cancer journey, and to help people not just navigate the journey, but to be able to become activated to take control of their health and care in the midst of a health crisis. So I think one of the things that we've done is bring our work out into especially low-income communities that lack access. We've used technology to enable and amplify our work and scale nationally. And we are leading the charge to make sure that people are treated first, not just the disease. And so our organization is led by social work. That's what leads our program model. And it's an interdisciplinary team of child life specialists, public health professionals, oncology registered dietitians, all taking a whole person and family view. And we're with people from pre-survivorship through diagnosis, treatment, survivorship, and for those who move into end-of-life care and the families along that entire continuum of care at no charge. So it's a gift to work for an organization like this with a mission as powerful as this is, but we can't do it alone. So partnerships are really important to us. So it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you and talk about the work of your foundation as well, and how our missions complement one another.
Thank you. I think there were so much of what you said is 100% where my heart and my soul and my brain is always. But 2 things that you said, 2 words or that you really used or alluded to that pop to me are taking the holistic approach and pre-survivorship. Mm-hmm. So to me, taking a holistic approach to a cancer diagnosis and then how to rally around and get through that it truly has to be a whole mind, body, emotional experience that you help someone through. In particular for people who don't know where to turn and don't know what to do and don't know how to put one foot in front of the other. When you hear you have cancer, like you said, the first thing you go is, I'm going to die. Like, this is a death sentence. And so just dealing with that initial reaction or that initial diagnosis and figuring out how to move forward, how to work through your treatment medically, and then all the other things that come along with it. And then this notion of previvorship, it's new, right? This was not something that we were talking about. I mean, the Lynne Cohen Foundation started in 1998, so just about the same time as Crossroads for Hope 2001. Right. And previvorship was not a word. I don't think I'd ever.
I don't know when that was created, but yeah.
And I kind of want to meet the person that created it. I have to assume it was a woman. But this notion of preventive care, which is where, we really reside and we hone in on, is so magnificent. And it is so important to the journey. Because if the journey starts after previvorship, it's like a little too late. Because then you get this tsunami of, I just want to say a bad word, but this like tsunami of crap thrown at you that you have no idea where you stand and what your life is going to be like and your chances are. So I love this idea of talking about what does it mean to be a previvor. I've met and had amazing conversations with women. That's how, they call them, they're a previvor. They're genetically had cancer in their family. They knew that they carried a genetic mutation. So they took action and then took, sometimes easy action, which was just monitoring, understanding. And some women took, serious medical action depending on their actual risk of double mastectomies or hysterectomies, and saying like, this is how I'm choosing to live my life because I can't live with this sort of almost diagnosis hanging over my head. And they call themselves a previvor, which is the best word to describe them. So tell me about how you work with people during these different stages of this big C word.
Yeah. So I'd like to maybe just before I share my thoughts on that, just on the concept of previvor. So, clearly individuals facing a genetic predisposition has been the historical category. But we have people who, because of job, firefighters, military, veterans, who have been exposed and are at risk and are living with the fear that surrounds a potential cancer diagnosis. There's really not a place for people in the healthcare system who are facing that. And then circumstance. What we know is in low-income communities, individuals are most at risk because oftentimes polluting industries are located in low-income communities. So people are being exposed. So I think we all are looking to maybe have a more inclusive understanding of previvorship. There's so many people that fall into that category, and yet there's no services to help people with the worry, not just the clinical management of that, but the emotional burden that comes with that.
So I'm going to stop you for a sec because I think that is so incredibly important. I'll tell you an anecdote. My little brother was in the military. He was in the Navy for over a decade, and he had multiple assignments churning the burn bin. So this has gotten more attention because Biden actually passed an incredible, I don't know what it was. It wasn't a law, but giving money to vets, allowing them to help with their healthcare who had been in these situations. So for those of you who don't know, when you're at an embassy overseas, usually in a war-ravaged area, in Iraq, Afghanistan, where my brother was, you burn stuff like computers and electronics and things that you don't want to leave behind, or it's time for them to go. And you literally burn them in a giant,
right next to where people are living. It's like
where they're living.
Camps.
Everyone's living.
Yeah.
And they stand over like a witch's cauldron and stew the burn with, and these guys were not wearing a mask, nothing, with the chemicals from the going straight into their face. And there are so many vets and firefighters are put in situations where they have the same kind of chemicals that are going straight into their bodies. And the long-term effects from the exposure is kind of even unknown. But what you said was dealing with the psychological knowledge that you've been exposed to that. And how is this going to affect me? And is this sort of, future diagnosis hanging over my head? Who do I talk to? How do I deal with this? So that
even
I just
9/11.
think, no, I
Even
mean,
9/11, we're dealing with patients volunteers who ran
I
into
was
this
there. I
space.
watched
Yeah.
it. I think about it all the time. They literally ran into the fire and the smoke, and everything that was burning in those buildings was so toxic
Mhm.
and life-changing in every way. So what do you do? So I
Yeah.
guess we could start there. What do you do
Yeah.
for these people that need
Yeah.
understanding and need compassion and also need facts?
Yeah. So I think the beauty of our organization is the fact that our work is rooted in the principles and ethics of social work. And when you think about the healthcare professions, they meet you based on whatever your issue is, what part of your body is affected, what type of disease it is. But in social work, they meet you where you are in the context of your life, your family, and your community. And so, I'll give this example. We have an oncology registered dietitian, and we had somebody who had gotten some services in the hospital, and it was basically checking the box. This person was having difficulty eating. And when they ended up connecting with our RD, she started with, "How are you doing? Tell me what your day is like. How do you approach mealtime? What does that feel like for you? What are the things you're worried about?" It's a completely different orientation to people. And I think, I've been doing this a long time now, and I see the healthcare system getting more and more grounded in disease treatment and billing. And we're forgetting it's people. The WHO in 1948 included in their congressional charter that health is more than just the absence of disease and infirmity. Mm-hmm. It's your emotional, social, spiritual well-being. And we don't address that in the healthcare system, but we do in the community, and we do at Crossroads for Hope. Yeah. And so it's starting with what their needs are. And oftentimes it's not always the cancer. It's other things happening, like I don't have transportation, or, we're screening people, for example, on a weekly basis for distress, risk for depression, and social needs and companionship. We are seeing 22% of the people we're screening lack companionship. And what we know is that has a direct impact on healthcare utilization, chronic disease, mental health,
lifespan.
We see people who are caregivers who are escalating, bereaved who are escalating. These are the next patients, because we're not dealing in the healthcare system with their needs. But for patients, it is about worry about death. I worked in hospice care. So I've worked I'm big fun at cocktail parties. I've worked in hospice care. I've worked in disaster response and preparedness, and now cancer. So I'm big fun. But across all of those organizations, we had to leverage social work with health services, co-managing cases, because that's a holistic approach. And so there is real worry for people about death, and nobody's walking around the planet contemplating their death and what gives their life meaning and quality. And what if I was told tomorrow that my life is really limited? We're all living with that. But what if I knew that this disease could accelerate that? No one is prepared for that. So we have to unpack all of that, all the practical needs, and all the real issues around finding care. We had a woman who, she was in charity care. She was working full time at age 70. She does not have insurance through her employer. Her charity application got denied. She knew her breast cancer had returned. We helped her get that resolved. And then when we got her into charity care, they told her it would take 10 weeks to get care. She would have been dead. So we are not seeing the impact of all of this, the disease, the healthcare system, the insurance, the lack of resources, because it's happening in the privacy of people's homes. Right. But when they call us, we're invited into that space, and that's where we start our work.
Yeah. And I often think about, I say this a lot, we're LA based and you're tri-state area based, I guess I could say.
Mhm.
And how lucky are we? And we still face this.
Mhm.
I mean, you think about women and men in rural communities, miles and miles away from healthcare professionals of any kind. People their actual healthcare professionals are not educated in what a holistic approach means, let alone the level of care that they should be getting for everything, for their disease, for their mental health, for their emotional health, for their overall well-being. That's what makes me, freak out because
Yeah.
and then it's being able to, which I want to address now with you, and the being able to utilize modern technology to reach those people.
Mhm.
Because to me, that's the hardest thing. Like, one is when we talk about like previvorship, for me, the hardest part of this job, and we work, our clinics are for women who are potentially at increased risk for breast ovarian cancer due to a number of reasons. Obviously, genetics, family history, having had cancer, all sorts of things, being of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, the list goes on. I don't have a genetic mutation, but because my mother was diagnosed so young with ovarian cancer and died, my doctors consider us to be high risk and to consider us almost that we have a genetic mutation that just hasn't been found yet. And it's getting healthy people in to see a healthcare professional. So to me, that has been a huge, not a roadblock, but that's been the hardest part of the job. Like, once they're in, we can help you. We can give you everything you need. But getting someone who is, like you said, not walking around thinking about their death and not thinking around what might happen to them, but getting them to acknowledge their risk. To me, that's a really, really hard hurdle to get over that we'll struggle with as long as I'm doing this, which is going to be my whole life. So tell me about how you've utilized technology. I know you have an app, and how you get to people. Like, how do you get to them and get, like you said, you're in their homes, you're in their private space where then you can truly help. How have you managed to do that?
Well, it's interesting. So pandemic changed everything. We pivoted. It really accelerated our virtual programs. But
one of the great things to come out of it.
We leaned right into it.
Yeah.
But let me just share with you. So we are in 45 states, and people from 4 countries are reaching us. We just had somebody from Kansas find us because she lacked resources in her area, and she found us on the internet.
It's amazing.
What we are doing in New Jersey is we're piloting a public health model. So coming out of the Red Cross, I had exposure to work that was happening internationally in countries where there's no public health infrastructure. And the models there look different. And so we're implementing some of those as a pilot in New Jersey. So we're going into low-income communities. We're building trusted relationships with organizations already on the ground. We are starting to deliver education and information to bring people in comfortable ways where we can have the conversation. And we're also then activating communities. We have a program called our Health Champion Program, where we're training lay people to, I use the CPR model, right? In CPR, you have to have enough people in the community in case somebody has a heart attack. There's somebody around trained to do something. We want the same in cancer because nobody knows what to do or say or how to help. And so in low-income communities where we're seeing people die from treatable cancers because they're not accessing healthcare for a variety of very relevant reasons, we have to break down the barriers, which include things like trust. We have to work on normalizing conversations around cancer and connecting people sooner to resources like ours so that we can help people get into care and stay into care. Technology is important for scale. So we, very early on when the Affordable Health Care Act came out and the oncology care model pilot was launched, there was this hope that they were truly going to integrate psychosocial support because it is the standard of care that nobody can seem to achieve because the current models are old. They're usually delivered in person, small group models. So we started thinking about what true integration would look like. Fast forward to the pandemic, we connected with a company, a behavioral health company. We customized a white label product into My Go-To Support. It's actually direct to mobile. It doesn't require any downloading of an app.
That's
And
amazing.
we are supporting people across the country with supportive resources, a library of educational information and resources. And if they escalate, we screen them every week. If people escalate because they're at risk due to distress, risk for depression or social needs, they're triaged to our social work team, and that team follows up with each person to make sure that we can close those gaps in care before they become barriers to care.
That's
and
amazing.
So we envisioned ourselves literally being in people's pockets. And now it's come true. So that work is actually being embedded into our outreach. So we're working with mobile screening programs, and we're enrolling people in the community into the program. So if they're diagnosed, they're already in our sphere of work, and we can help them immediately. So that to me is a proactive response and is transformative for patients and families. They don't have to hurt themselves to find resources.
Yeah. I remember, I was 16 when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And we're I come from a highly educated family with lots of resources, and we didn't talk about it at all. And we were pretty chatty. I have two older sisters, a little brother. We didn't talk about it. And to be honest, neither did my mom. She fought ovarian cancer for 5 years, from 1993 to 1998, which was pretty unheard of, actually, to sort of survive for 5 years and then not survive was bizarre. But we didn't talk about it. And I didn't talk about it until I think my junior year of college. I was in North Carolina at Duke, and I found a therapist because I was like, I feel like I need to talk about this. I don't, I'm away. I was going back to LA a lot, which back in those days, it was 2 flights. There was no direct flight. It was a huge pain. And I think back to that time a lot. And I have a little brother who I mentioned earlier. He's 7 years younger than I am. He was 10 when my mom was diagnosed, 15 when she died. I have 3 boys myself, and my youngest is almost 15. So I think about that portion of his life all the time, and how incredibly formative it is, and the mom-son relationship, all of it. And I think a lot, like, were there resources available? Was it because it was before the internet that we didn't even know? I don't know. There was some that were in the hospital, but it felt really...
It was very few. There were very few resources.
And what existed felt so medical and also so sad. And I remember I talked to my mom about it once. I said, do you want to be in a support group? And she was like, no, I don't want to sit around with other women who have cancer and are dying. That sounds horrible to me. And I got it. And I still get that. She wanted to survive. She didn't want to be sitting, moaning about her life. That's how she survived for 5 years. I believe that. But I just think so, when we started this foundation, and about 2 years later, when I decided this is what I wanted to do with my life, I was 23 when I decided that. I was a baby. I was a child. My oldest son's almost 22. The idea that he would know what he wants to do is bizarre. But somehow I knew, and I did know in my heart and in my soul and in my gut that this had to be a holistic process. That even if we were going to focus, which we started by, just on the preventive medicine side, it had to deal with the whole person and the whole body. And how do we, if we don't personally provide the resources of support in sort of the way that you do, how do we connect with that? And so I think that it can't be said enough how important this piece is, from pre-survivorship to survivorship. And I just feel like also I don't know how you've dealt with this, but one of the interesting or difficult pieces is that has to be acknowledged is everyone's different, right? Everyone's journey is different, and every cancer is different. And every stage, if you get the same cancer caught in a different stage, then that's a very different journey. And so I think that if the people on the care side have knowledge of that, that makes it even more specialized. Have you,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a topic of conversation with
Oh,
your.
yeah. You have to have a variety of different approaches that meet a broad need. But I think, I've spent a lot of time working in spaces that are difficult to talk about. End of life care, death and dying, disasters, right? And what I would say to you is, it is very true that, the two things that we all share is birth and death. And we're all happy to talk about birth, and we act like we're never going to die. And that is actually a disservice. And so I think a lot of what we can do as leaders too is to talk about how can we live to our fullest each and every day to the last day that we have, right? This isn't, in hospice, they used to have a saying, it's all about how you live. We saw people who were referred with enough time and enough support that they were able to do things and close out their life in a way that brought joy and peace to the whole family. I've seen bad deaths. I've seen the healthcare system downstream where people are not prepared, where people move through their life with the burden of, regret and worry for how a loved one died, or they weren't allowed to grieve. And it's because we deal with things, and maybe it's a protective mechanism, more medically than emotionally. And what I'd like to see is we need to deal with people. There's a crisis in this country where, people aren't going for screenings. They're not even talking about their risk.
Oh, people don't want to talk about it's the funny thing I think is there's this great, dichotomy or a great forces banging against each other. One is wellness is a word, and wellness is a huge industry now. And again, back in the early 2000s, wellness was not an industry. But it's not for everyone. Wellness is not an industry for everyone. Wellness is an industry for people who have access, right? So you have this large group of people who think of wellness as their life, and they are 2 feet in, they've jumped right in. I'm going to figure out how I can live till I'm 202 and I can have 0% body fat or whatever it is and make my face look like I'm 20. The whole idea of wellness, from kind of the worst parts about it to the best. But then you have people who have no idea what I'm talking about and are just surviving every day. And they're not worried about the probiotic they're taking and if it's the best one on the market, or what kind of diet is going to serve them best for their body type, and what they might have been exposed to or will be exposed to either from their lifestyle or genetically. And it's not part of their conversation. And so it's finding a way to, I think, to get to all those people and to disseminate real information, science-backed, medically backed, expert-backed, real information.
We've had people who have been diagnosed who have resources and end up going to these clinics where I don't know what they're eating for 6 weeks, but it's supposed to, and then they come back, they can't maintain it. Right. So these extremes are the problem, so, and the other thing I wanted to say, there was something that you said earlier that I want to come back to. We serve people who have health insurance, who have resources, all the way down to people who have nothing. And it's really hard to talk to people about cancer screenings or taking care of yourself when you're worried you're going to lose your home. Or you can't pay your rent. And, so I keep hearing everybody say, just go get screened. But if I don't have health insurance and I don't have transportation, like in New Jersey, you'd think, okay, well, everybody can get to healthcare. You can't. There are some communities in this state, you might as well be 600 miles away from a hospital because you can't get there.
Also, you're telling people to get screened. There are people who have no idea what you're talking about.
That's right.
Screened for what? And what does screening mean? Does that mean an X-ray, a wand over me? So people have no idea, and it's not their fault. It's not part of their, it's not part of their language. It's not part of what they're thinking about, like you said, every day, whether it's because they're putting food on the table or they have, 7 kids and they're in charge and they work, whatever it is. I mean, I find this particularly frustrating and part of my, what keeps me up at night when I work with women, and it's women who are doing it all and who are, putting everyone first and making sure everyone has everything. And yet they have never had a mammogram in their life, or they don't know that a pap smear doesn't detect ovarian cancer, or they have, they're well over 50 and no one's talked to them about a colonoscopy. And, these preventive measures, or have never seen a dermatologist to check out that weird black thing on their back, whatever it is, and it's not necessarily because they don't care. It's not because they don't want to be healthy, and they don't want to live a long time and in a high quality of life. It's because one, they don't know, maybe, or if they do know, it's impossible to deal with. It's like, don't add something else to my calendar. And so to figure out a way to make it normative, and to make it not a struggle is hard. It's hard. It's a lot of work.
And it's, we sit in many conversations with industry professionals, and we talk about this all the time, but no one knows how to deal with this problem. And the solutions that keep coming up are that we need, maybe it's another brochure we need, or maybe it's another website we need. And what I'm arguing is, no, you have to put boots on the ground, people in their community, where they go to church, where they get services. I'll give you an example. Until we started doing this, we had no idea that the consulates were getting bombarded with issues around cancer, because people from the community that they serve would turn to them as a trusted resource. They had no idea what to do with that. So we started training consulate staff on what to do. You don't know that until you're literally working in the community, where people get resources. And so, I really feel like in some respects, we have to make community interesting again. And that's where life happens. It doesn't happen on the internet, for goodness sake. It happens in your neighborhood.
Community. I mean, it's like when my kid, God, not long ago, one of my children, back when he was a younger teenager, he was like, we went to the market and we left. He goes, "Oh yeah, I know." And I said hi to a mom who is a mom woman I know. And we walked out. He goes, "Oh yeah, I know her daughter. I'm friends with her." I was like, "Well, why didn't you say hi?" He's like, "Oh, I've never met her, but I'm friends with her." I said to him,
the new friends.
You're not. Let's
be clear, you're not friends.
You're not friends. So this, it sort of blew my mind. It was
disconnect.
It was like 10 something years ago where sort of this, or whatever social media just started. I was like, no, but I agree. And to me, it's more than that. It's actually bringing community back. Yeah, and it's saying that community is really important. I'll tell you something interesting. I just, my husband said this to me the other day. He overheard people talking about young people in their early 20s about church and where they go to church and how much they like it and how much, it's grounding for them and they never thought about it earlier. And he said to me, I think there's a shift. I think there's a shift happening with that generation that are so disconnected from post-COVID, just so disconnected, and they don't have a community and they're feeling it. And now they're in the workplace and they're taking care of themselves and they have some responsibility and they are craving community. And so I do think it's like this amazing moment that we can not just get in their community and make it fun or cool or whatever, but help build those communities and then be able to help them be healthy.
I agree with you. I just, when we were coming up and growing up, your world was on your block. And then the internet came and put the world literally on your block. And I don't know that that was a good thing because it's very distracting. We care more about what's happening somewhere around the world where which is important, but we've forgotten that what's also important is your neighbor. We have people who are sitting in their homes alone and no one's checking on them. Yeah. Nobody's thinking about that. And I say that that's a broad statement. There are organizations doing work, but it's important. You said bring community back. I've had people say to me, we have to make community sexy again. Yeah. It should be interesting. It's actually where you can connect. And
I agree.
So I think that's where we're rooted. And I would say, people have asked us as we scale, are you going to open offices, places? And I'm like, no, because the community already has places where people go. That's where I want to be. I don't want them to have to come to another place that's not where they go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will, deploy public health resources in every state that we're going to be operating in. But we'll do that in the context of leveraging the assets that are in those communities, and then technology to reach the people where we physically can't be. So you have to use multiple approaches and partnerships.
Yeah.
And, and we can talk offline about how best we can work together, but it's going to take a village to really tackle what has become an incredibly fragmented healthcare system.
Yeah.
And there are so many people flowing through the cracks that, it's going to take all of us.
I agree 100%. And I also think that, I love the idea of make communities sexy again, but I also think people ask me that all the time, like, why didn't you erect a building, for your clinics? And I was like, why would I do that? These hospitals exist and the healthcare providers work there. So why wouldn't I want to be in there? Why wouldn't I want to be entrenched where people are already going, where it exists? And I'm a nonprofit. So why do you want me to ask you for money to build something that already exists and that just sort of separates us from the community and the action, so to speak? That doesn't make any sense to me. So
and there's tons of organizations that have done that nationally, and they have to pull back because they can't sustain it.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. It's not sustainable.
No. And I believe it added to the fragmentation of where we find these resources. So I am so on board with, I have this vision of moms all over the country parents sitting all the country at soccer games on Saturdays, with their little kids, taking time to be with them. And you think, okay, well, you get there an hour early for the warm up. I've sat through lots of those. Wouldn't that be a great time to be in their community? Wouldn't that be a great time to just disseminate information and talk, and very casually? But it's just resources, and it's finding people on the ground. Like you said, it's boots on the ground. It's finding people who are connecting and helping to connect, and at the same time, help them and help people without being demeaning and without acting like we're, know so much more than you, but just being good neighbors.
And that's what I see our Health Champion program. I see that becoming that, in the sense that we are activating community members to know what to do and say when somebody they care about has been diagnosed with cancer, so they feel empowered and they can empower others. And it's not a heavy lift. Mobilizing people is not a new concept.
No.
But in oncology, it is. It hasn't really been done well.
No, I know, the first thing that my sort of larger group of friends does when someone's had a cancer diagnosis, which we've lived through a few, too many. The first thing we do is to set up the meals. Mm-hmm. It's, how many weeks, how many days, how many months of meals are we all dropping off at that person's house? So they don't have to think about it. Their husband has no idea, and their kids are fed. And to me, it's a wonderful thing. Technology has made it so easy. It's not like you're baking and driving. You literally order it on whatever app you're doing and stuff, and something gets delivered. Yeah. But that's like the tip of the iceberg, right? Mm-hmm. So it's also like, how do we rally as a community and have that conversation? How do we give support to their entire family and help them through a time or point them in the right direction? So to me, it's like, we know more than that, and we have to do more than that for each other.
But I think it starts somewhere, and I wouldn't minimize the impact of even that gesture.
Oh no,
it's like the first step. I
agree. It's huge. The meal train is huge, and whenever that's happened, it breaks my heart that someone's dealing with a diagnosis of some sort, but it warms my heart in the way that we're taking care of each other. And we know that, especially, like, silly to say in today's day and age, but especially if it's the woman that is diagnosed with a disease, like, just taking care of the meals and filling their fridge is a huge burden that you've unloaded for the time that they need it.
Yeah.
But it is the tip of the iceberg. So we've started and we can figure that out. But how we rally and really, like you said, and that's kind of sexy, that's kind of a fun, cool thing we're doing. So how do we have to just do more of that and make it cool again?
And not minimize too the fact that we all get something that's important for our own health and mental well-being when we help someone else, right?
Oh, yeah.
People are desperate to feel like they have some sort of purpose.
Oh.
And, channeling people's efforts in this way helps everybody. It builds stronger communities.
It does. It does. It's like we say to when my kids want to ask someone for a mentorship or, something. And we always say to them, people want to help you. People who have done well in their whatever field they're in, or people just want to it makes them feel good. And I do think that can't be minimized. I don't think we should minimize that. I think it's part of a wonderful piece of the human condition. And I do believe wholeheartedly what you said, that, and I say this all the time, that a life without purpose is not a life. I think that's the main thing to reach for in your life goals is, how do I find purpose with what I do? And whether it's what you do every single day, like you and I do, or whether it's something you do sporadically. But if you don't have purpose, you wake up one day and you look back and you feel pretty crummy.
It's an empty existence in some respects. So, and that's when we talk about bringing people in and giving them the opportunity to give back. And
empower them with the knowledge and the ability to help in a real way that makes a difference.
Yeah. And it's the small things. I think, everybody's looking for some big thing to do, and it is not. Yeah. It's the day-to-day stuff. It's the small things that matter. That's what builds a life.
I agree.
And, if you can reduce somebody's burden on just daily living, that is huge. So kudos to you in embracing this mission that you're on personally to help others. But I think, even just the fact that we're now connected, we'll have to spread that energy around and connect more. But I think connecting like-minded people and organizations is building community and building strength.
I agree 100%. And thank you. I think the organization's wonderful and it's so impactful. I think one of the hardest things to do in this business of running a foundation is staying relevant. And to me, staying relevant is staying impactful and continuing to build on what you have so that you can continue that line, I think is the best and the hardest part. And changing as the world changes, and knowing that, you can't do things the way they were done 5, let alone 20 years ago, because you're not going to get as much out of it. And I think that's a really hard thing to do. I've repeated this 1,000 times, but one of the gynecologic oncologists we work with at NYU, this brilliant, brilliant woman, the thing she says to me the most often is, it's not extraordinary that we started this. It's not extraordinary that we created this foundation in honor of my mom. When you go through tragic loss, people like to do something, and we had the means and the ability to do it. But what's extraordinary is that we're still doing it. Right. And so to me, that's the greatest compliment, because I think the only way to continue to do that and to continue to say we're still here and we're still doing it is that because we're still relevant, and we're still making an impact. Now, do I hope that there's no need for, women to come to a preventive care clinic because because they might be diagnosed with cancer? Sure, I wish cancer was a thing of the past, but realistically, I live in reality with my feet on the ground, so that's important. And then the educational piece and staying relevant and be able to disseminate real, solid, true information, especially in this day and age where there's so much information out there that's just crap, is a huge piece too. So major kudos to you. And I mean, your life is incredible. You're like such a
I don't know if my family thinks that, but it's been a ride for sure.
I'm sure. And I don't know. I like to be at a dinner table and have someone talk to me about death.
I'm not afraid to talk about things. Let me just say.
Me neither. And I'm a truth teller. There's a friend of mine who I work with, who just texted me today, who's pregnant for the first time. And it's a bit of a miracle. She's my age. She's 48. And she's like, I don't know what to say, but I don't enjoy being pregnant. I was like, I hated being pregnant. I felt gross. I didn't like it. I didn't find it glowing and magical. And she's like, oh my God, thanks for telling me. I feel so validated.
Yeah, I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Not everyone has the same experience that you see on like the Hallmark Channel. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not the way everyone lives. So, thank you for what you're doing. I think let's definitely continue the conversation and find ways to reach more people. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.